This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan.
Hey, beautiful soul. It's Jacqueline from the Las Vegas Chronicles in partnership with Lichen Sclerosus Support Network. If you have lichen sclerosus and are looking to empower yourself with information, find acceptance, and reclaim your life, then please subscribe to our channel and keep on watching. And if you have a friend or family member or loved one with lichen sclerosus and you want to learn more about the physical and mental health aspects of living with LS so that you can better support them in their journey, then please subscribe to our channel and please share it with them as well. All right, so today I am super excited to be joined by the wonderful Penny, who is a fellow LS warrior and the founder of the Pelvic Health Yoga membership. And today we are going to be talking about the importance of pelvic health and why it's important to prioritize your pelvic health with lichen sclerosus and how the membership can help you do just that. So as always, if you find the information in this video helpful, please give us a subscribe. Please click that like button and feel free to leave us a comment. So yay, Penny, welcome to our channel. Super excited to have you here with us today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and I am feeling really good today. Thank you. I'm on the first day of my period, so I'm like, a little bit of in the winter phase right now, but I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I love that you always keep it real. That's one of my favorite things about you is there's no sugarcoating. If we're not good, we're not good, and we are naming it. It is not a good day, and that's okay. All right, so for folks that do not know Penny, you're going to get to know her, and she's absolutely fabulous. But Penny, let's start with you kind of introducing yourself and just share your LS journey to getting a diagnosis.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, where do we begin? I was trying to have sex when I was 17 years old and it didn't work. It was like hitting a wall. And many of us know that story way too well, but it was impossible. And then when I was 18, I tried having sex again and it did work. And it was so painful. It was super, super painful. And I thought that that was normal because you're supposed to have pain the first time you're having sex.
Right.
And I just kept on trying to have sex. I'm also going to add that I had a lot of alcohol in my body during this time when I was trying to have sex because I was in a lot of pain. And I tried to use that to numb myself. And then when I was 19, I was sent to a specialist because I went to the youth clinic first twice and they said that there was nothing wrong with me and everything looked fine. But then I was sent to a specialist and they did a biopsy and then I was diagnosed with lichen sclerosus when I was 19 years old. So for me, it was pretty quickly to get to that diagnosis, but I don't know how long I've lived with lichen sclerosus because before 17,
you weren't trying to have sex. So if the pain with sex was your main symptom, and you weren't having sex before, I mean, we'll never know, right? No. But there's absolutely a possibility that you had it as a young teen, even a young girl, right? Like that's the other thing is there's so much myths that have already been like dropped in this conversation already. The fact that it's supposed to hurt the first time, like, no, that's a myth, get out of here. Like LS only happens to postmenopausal people, like, nope, that's a myth, get out of here. Like, diagnosed with a biopsy at 19 years old, symptomatic before 19, and you and I both know people that get diagnosed very young, and 19 is very young, and it's very possible, that you had it before, but there's no way for us to really know. And one thing that I appreciate about your story is your honesty, with the alcohol, because I remember hearing an interview with you on Lichen Sclerosus podcast, and I remember you talking about the pain and how you kind of used alcohol as a coping mechanism. And I actually cried when I heard that, and I was really glad that I was not on camera for that because I was just listening in on the back end and saw the chat and stuff, but you couldn't see my face. And I was actually crying because when you shared that, I felt so validated because that's what I used for the longest time. And I actually developed quite a nasty habit because that, just grew to be all consuming because there was no way that I could have sex. And it still hurt with the alcohol, right? But it made it like easier for me to kind of forget about it. And it just, again, it didn't solve it, but it made it a bit easier. And all I wanted was for my body to just work the way I thought it should work.
I know, you just wanted to be normal.
Yeah, I know. I always say that. And I love the quotations because I do that too, because it's like you and I both know that there's no such thing. But nonetheless, it's like I just want it to work like, normal, like how society says it's supposed to work. Like I like a person, we get down and we both orgasm and yay. And I'm like,
yeah,
what about the pain part? Where does that come in? What about the tearing? Like
where
does that come in? Why are we not talking about that part?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So how did you feel at 19 years old getting told that you had this condition?
So I didn't really know what it meant. When I had my first biopsy, the little, this a lot better than I do, but a little numbing shot that they give you, it didn't work. And my mom was with me and I was lying there and I was getting this biopsy done. Like that was very traumatic for me.
No kidding. Because already, a lot of doctors and clinicians for a punch biopsy, they just inject you with anesthesia, like local, and then they do the biopsy. But like a good doctor will add a third step and actually first put a numbing cream on the vulva so that because the injection is very painful. Anyone that has the biopsy will say the biopsy itself wasn't as bad as that needle, the first needle. So like a good clinician will actually go in with a numbing cream first. Sometimes it's something like Emla. They'll numb up that skin, then they go in with the injection. So there's like double numbing going on, but you had nothing. That's like me going over and knocking on your door right now and be like, Penny, spread your legs. We're doing a biopsy. Get ready. Like nothing. That must have been, I can't even imagine the pain.
Speaking of that, I remember last time I had a laser surgery, I put the Emla on first myself. And like I had from that first biopsy, like really bad history with biopsies. I've taken many of them. So I like spread it on really thick. And then I get to the doctor and he's like, oh, you really went all in. Because I spread so much on it.
You really went all in.
Wipe it off. I'm like, sorry. I haven't actually told anyone that story.
That's hilarious. I mean, I don't blame you with all the pain that you experienced in the past. And like, I don't know folks from different areas of the world. Like in Canada, you can get Emla over the counter for like minor kind of procedures and minor surgeries. So like I just picture you like emptying out the whole tube and then just like slathering it on.
I put some on at home and it takes me 45 minutes to drive to my doctor. When I get to the doctor, I'm like, might as well bladder some more on there. And then he just starts wipe it off. So he can like see.
And you're like, no, I need that. Keep it on me, please. Did it help at all? Like with the
I could still feel the injection. Yeah. Like I hate the injection. Like that is definitely the worst part. So that first biopsy was not a good one. My mom, I just remember her being in the room with me and I was like holding her hand. I was like, oh my God, not knowing what was going on. Like barely had sex. The times that I did have sex, I've been like so drunk and then go there and just like, there's something wrong, but I don't know what. And then getting a biopsy at that age, it was.
I mean, this is traumatic for anyone, but like going through all that at 19 is super traumatic. Like I can't even understand. Like that's just so much pain and so much to process. And then you get told like, okay, it's lichen sclerosus, and you're like, that's nice. Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What do I do? So did they give you, I'm guessing, I know this was in Sweden, right? You were still living in Sweden at the time? Yeah. So then did they give you like a steroid ointment or?
Yes, they did. So I've gotten, right now, like knowing what I know now, I wish I would have kept track of everything that I've been through. But they gave me steroid ointment. I also think they gave me estrogen, but that might have been a little bit later. So I got the steroid ointment, but there was no like, okay, what do I do with it? How often do I use it? What's going on? I'm like, okay. But funny part is when I think back, because like I still tear till this day. And when I think back, I can't remember the tears. Like, it's a little bit weird, you know? They've been there,
Hmm.
but I can't really remember them. And I'm like, when oh, yeah. So it's just interesting. But anyway, I get the steroid ointment. I like to jump from one topic to the other.
No problem. We'll roll with it. My husband works like that, so I'm well trained.
Okay, good. No, so I got the steroid ointment, and then when I was 20, I moved and I got another specialist, and they were trying to help me. I had a couple of surgeries. I had 4 surgeries in my early 20s from when I was 20, 21 to 24. I had 4 surgeries
A
to help
lot.
me. Yeah, that was a lot, but I didn't really
And that
get
was all for lichen sclerosus, right?
Yes. So I had a sexual encounter where I was very drunk. So that's also the thing when you're having alcohol, thinking that, oh, I'm going to have normal sex. And then the next day you wake up. Not only are you in a lot more pain because you didn't listen to your body, you also have that
Hmm.
worst anxiety ever because you did something that your body didn't really want to do. You just wanted to be
100%.
normal. Yeah.
Hmm.
So we were having sex, and then the next day, I was gonna ride my bike home, and I couldn't sit on my bike. It was too painful. Yeah,
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
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 So I had really bad tearing towards the perineum, and then they decided to do, I think it's called a partial vulvectomy, if I'm not
Okay. Yep.
mistaken, where
Yep.
they
That's
pull out
correct.
the vaginal wall and attach it. But I didn't really get any clear guidance on how to handle it after they did the first surgery, so it didn't really heal properly.
Oh no.
Yeah, because the steroid ointment didn't really talk about that, like nothing like that. And I was 21 at the time. And I just thought that, oh, this is going to fix everything. But then it just gave me really bad scar tissue instead. And then
Mm-hmm.
they redid the same surgery 3 times. Yeah,
Why did they keep redoing it?
uh, because they thought it was going to fix it.
Wow.
So it's
I
just got
think,
more and more scar tissue.
yeah, well, that's what I was thinking because I was trying to figure out what their motivation was for redoing the same surgery like 3 more times. And I'm thinking, so, but with each time you're causing trauma and creating more scar tissue, like, and also like maybe the first surgery would have taken correctly if you actually took the time to provide good aftercare instructions on how to heal. Like that's one thing when I hear about people getting surgeries and procedures and they show me their sheet and it's just like, don't have sex and keep the area dry. And I'm like, that's not very helpful. Like, can you give more guidance on what we should be doing in order for the surgery to be as successful as possible? So it kind of really sounds like with the steroid and the surgeries, like they really just left you to your own devices, kind of.
Yeah, and I feel like they didn't really know, like, to be just keep that in mind that this was 12 years ago, so they probably
Yeah,
didn't really know what they were doing either. Like, there's so much more information out there right now,
that's
thanks to people
true.
like you and the, like,
Mm-hmm.
support network. But I don't think really that they knew what they were doing, and they were a little bit like, "Oh my god, she's so young. What are we gonna do with her?"
Right, right. And that's true too, because a lot of doctors, especially at that time, but still now, are like, young people don't get LS. And
Mhm,
then so when they get a case and there's a patient who's young, they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Like,
mhm,
we don't really know. We're just going to kind of go in blind. And I'm
mhm.
like, I mean, you
Yeah,
could consult with someone maybe and get more guidance so that you can actually treat that patient properly. But
exactly. I even had a
I
doctor
digress.
trying to take back my diagnosis when I moved to Canada. So
But you have a biopsy.
yeah, I've seen
Like,
specialists in Sweden and in Australia, and then I moved to Canada, and he's like, "Oh, I think you're too young." I'm like, "No, I fought hard for this diagnosis. You are not taking it back."
no, I mean, first of all, like you literally have biopsy confirmed lichen sclerosus. Like
Mhm,
you have the piece of paper to show that, yes. And second of all, that's just wrong. Like
mhm,
to deny someone's diagnosis based on one's age
mhm.
makes no sense to me. It's not evidence based at all, and that person is clearly not keeping updated on the current literature. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said that. But like, how frustrating to be told like, no, that's not your diagnosis. You're wrong. Like,
But
who are
going
you? Go away.
exactly. Going back to what I was saying earlier, that I wish that I've taken, like, I've t what did I say? That I've had kept everything that I've gone
Yeah.
through. like on paper, but I actually had a paper from my doctors from back home when I left Sweden. They just wrote like this much,
Okay.
and it
Yeah.
said she had 3 surgeries. I did have 4. She had 3 surgeries. She has lichen sclerosus. So I gave that to him, and he's like, "Oh, maybe you're right." I'm like, "Thanks."
No, not maybe.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry. That's on me. My bad. Like, yeah. And I think that's like a good point just in general for anyone watching is the importance of creating a timeline. And just keeping track of things like when you were diagnosed, different medications that you were prescribed, different surgeries, different procedures, when they happened, how you recovered. It's just really important to have because one, your medical charts aren't always up to date. Case in point, it said 3 surgeries instead of 4. I've had a number of chats with my friends recently who looked at their medical file and were like, this is grossly like incorrect. And so it's nice to have that, especially because like one, our memories aren't perfect and we're going to forget things or we're going to, mix up dates and get things kind of muddled. So I find keeping a clear timeline of things, and even if you didn't do it before, now is still a good time. Like you can totally still do it today,
Exactly. And
get that information down.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I didn't remember having tears in the past, but now I've like started because there's so many things going on with the body all the time, especially if you're on if you have a menstrual cycle. So like I write down every day, okay, today I have a tear. This is what's going on in my pelvis today. Where am I in my cycle? And making those little dots as well to support yourself and also to keep that for the future as well, so that oh, what was going on in my life during that time? Did I have any surgeries? How was it the next day?
Yeah, I love that. And another thing I was thinking too, as you were speaking, as someone that also used alcohol to kind of cope through and like be able to have those relations, is that alcohol also screws with your memory, right? So like if you're trying to recall a night sober versus recalling a night when you were intoxicated, the sober memory is probably going to be a little bit more clearer than, the intoxicated memory. So I think that also plays, some role into like, did I tear? How bad was the tear? Was I in pain? I don't really remember. Like, it can make things kind of hard. But again, I just really appreciate you speaking so candidly about that because I know that you're not the only one that does that. And Penny and I are clearly not encouraging that. We're just speaking on, how we dealt with this at such a young age, not having the proper support tools, not having the proper resources to really help us cope in a healthy way. Like we were just doing what we thought was best at that time for ourselves, really,
Exactly. So. And if you're ever feeling that way, that you don't know how to cope, go to the virtual meetups with the Lichen Sclerosus Support Network. That's a great way to get
that. Yeah, 100%. Like reach out to the support groups, reach out to your own, network and see who can, provide you with support, because I think that's definitely something that I didn't have back then. And it sounds like you didn't have any kind of support, network back when you were in Sweden. So yeah, it was like you and I were just kind of wandering alone, trying our best to figure something out, which we knew nothing about. So no blame on us, right? We did our best, but it can be challenging. So you moved to Canada, and after this doctor finally accepts your diagnosis, did you ever start to experience any pelvic health issues along with your lichen sclerosus?
Yes. So that started a little bit earlier for me. Like that is something that I can connect back. So when I was young, when I was a teenager, I was a dancer. And when I was 15, I started to get really, really bad low back pain. And no one understood why. Like I saw so many doctors, chiropractors, I saw personal trainers. Everyone was trying to help me because I was also very fit from being a dancer. And they were like, oh, I don't understand what's wrong. And they told me to do all these weird things. One chiropractor said that I had to do a lot of back bends to like snap my back.
Oh, did they do like the Mackenzie method, which is where you're like lying on your stomach and then you like press up and do this like awkward bendy thing? Yeah.
I can't remember. This was like, I was really young. And then I had another personal trainer who told me I need to suck in my belly all the time and tuck my tailbone.
Ooh, which we now know is like
Yeah,
a no-no. Like, do not
exactly.
tuck your belly in, people.
Exactly. And being a dancer, that's what you're taught as well, because you're supposed to look thin and long,
Right.
slim. But yeah, so I started to get that pain. A little kitty coming up in the background there. And yeah, so that started when I was 15. And then this just kept on going. It kept on going. And then I was diagnosed when I was 19 with lichen sclerosus, still had low back pain. And then when I was 25, because I was always really active, but when I was 25, I was just like, I was at this point where I was like, it was just my low back was so bad and it was kind of like oozing into my pelvis. I'm like, what is going
Yeah.
on? And this is where yoga came in for me because I moved to Australia when I was 25, and there was one point. I have a couple points in my life where I can so clearly remember that I'm just like, I've had enough. I need to do something about this. I need to
Mhm.
take control of what's happening to my body. So I'm like, I'm going to try out yoga. And this was the second time I tried it out because the first time I hated it. And so when I went the second time, I loved it and I thought it was so good. And I was like, oh, maybe this will help me feel better in my body. And I just thought I had to be a lot more flexible. And I was just like
Mhm.
trying to bend my body into different ways. And it was weird. So physically, I was like trying to like kind of force it to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Mentally, I felt a lot better. Sorry. But then when I think I was 27, I went and saw my first pelvic PT, which I've never
Mhm.
heard about. And I was talking to her about this, and I just thought it was so interesting because I had an overactive pelvic floor. And I was like, and then I started connecting the dots between my pelvic floor and my low back pain.
Yeah.
Yes. And I started to use yoga in a completely different way after that because I was just like, oh, maybe there is some sense to it. And I started focusing a lot more on breath. And then I was in an accident when I was actually 27. It was right after I went to my pelvic PT.
Oh, wow.
And I got hit by a car when I was on my bike in a roundabout. So they drove into me on the left
Ooh.
hip, I think it was. Yes, left hip. And I fell to the ground and I got really bad whiplash. So I didn't do yoga for a while. But then I went back and I did some yoga. And then I realized this just makes me happier mentally. Like it really helps
Mhm.
me. It grounds me. It makes me feel supported. And then I heard about something called pelvic floor yoga. And that's how everything started for me. I started to like really fall into this where I could see that how my pain was really following me throughout my entire life from my pelvis. It wasn't that I had to
Mhm.
suck in my belly or push something back into my spine to help with my pelvis, but everything was connected because everything is connected in the body, especially low back, your
Totally
hips,
is.
your pelvis, your legs, everything is connected.
Yeah, so it's almost like from such a young age, your pelvis was just asking you to be acknowledged.
Mhm.
It was just saying, hey, notice me, give me some love, right? And I love what you said about it all being connected because it's so, so true. And for anyone listening that's unfamiliar with overactive pelvic floor, in a really quick nutshell, it's basically just super tense pelvic floor muscles. But if you do want to learn more about overactive pelvic floor, I did do a video on our YouTube channel with Dr. Mukta Chauhan, who talks all about overactive pelvic floor and LS. So I will leave a card up here and also in the description box below. But, it's true. And what I learned with Mukta was that the pelvic floor really is so intimately connected to the vulva. And that's important because a lot of us think like, okay, I have LS, it's a vulvar condition. So I got to treat the vulva. And there's no thought of where the pelvis and the pelvic floor muscles fit into that equation because we're just thinking vulva and that's it. But the reality is that those pelvic floor muscles are intimately connected to the vulva, so much so that when they're super tight like that, it can start affecting your vulva in ways that it can create vulvar itch and vulvar burning, which if you already have those symptoms from LS and now you're getting extra symptoms from the tight pelvic floor, it's like we maybe took the itch and the pain from a level 5 to like a level 8 because now we have pain coming from LS and the pelvic floor. And then when we don't treat those tight muscles, that can start moving from the superficial layers into the deeper layers of the pelvic floor. And then what can happen is the pelvic floor, it's kind of like a cradle or a hammock, and it houses some really important organs. So when it starts affecting the deeper layers of the pelvic floor, it can start affecting the bladder and the bowel. So you can start experiencing difficulties with urinating and with going to the bathroom. And then if you look anatomically, we notice that, yes, the pelvis is very closely connected to the sacrum and to the low back and to the hips. So sometimes if there's problems in the hips and the low back, like with you, Penny, right? It's like it can actually be from the pelvis. And something that I learned in physical therapy a while ago is just the concept of referred pain, which is where like I feel pain in my shoulder. So I go to the doctor saying my shoulder is the issue. There's pain here. But actually, if they did like an ultrasound and an MRI, it'll show no, there's nothing wrong with your shoulder. Actually, what's going on is it's an issue with the neck. Even though that my neck doesn't hurt, it's referring that pain into the shoulder so that I perceive the pain to be in my shoulder when actually it's in the neck. So it's like with the low back, it's like we think, okay, low back. So all these physical therapists telling you to like, do the Mackenzie press and all of that. Because the Mackenzie press is often for like herniated discs and they're trying to like pop the disc back into place kind of thing, which works if you have a herniated disc. But if the pain in the low back isn't from a herniated disc and it's coming from elsewhere, that actually sometimes makes the pain worse.
Yeah.
Because I also have low back pain. I have degenerative disc disease. And before I got that diagnosed with imaging, they would tell me to do very similar things, like do that press up in those back bends, and the back bends murdered my back. I was like, I don't understand. This is supposed to like fix my disc and fix my pain, and I'm feeling like more broken than ever after doing this. But again, like, and even hearing you speak, I'm like, again, I never made that connection between my pelvic floor and low back. So it's interesting that we both have overactive pelvic floor, we both have LS, and we both have low back pain, and I do get referred pain in my hips as well. So it really is all connected, and this is why, Mukta and I have had a lot of conversations on YouTube, on Instagram Lives, and we always say, if you have lichen sclerosus, go see a pelvic floor PT and get an assessment. Even if that's all you do, and you get the assessment, and the pelvic floor physical therapist says, I've never seen a more perfect pelvic floor, there's absolutely nothing wrong, it's the epitome of health, cool, now you know. But chances are they might find something. And it's important to also pay attention to your pelvis and to your pelvic health when trying to heal your LS, because you can heal your LS, but if you're not addressing your pelvic floor and you've got tight muscles, those could be causing issues like more itch, more pain, more symptoms, more difficulty with sex. And then you're saying, oh, it's my LS, but it might actually be coming from the pelvic floor, which is why we always suggest get an assessment with a pelvic floor physical therapist, if that's accessible to you. I want to be mindful that that's not accessible to many people for a number of reasons, such as, financial reasons, socioeconomic reasons, where they live in the world. But if it's accessible to you, it's definitely an important thing to do. And if it's not accessible to you, there are still ways that you can kind of manage and take control of your pelvic health. And we'll talk about that shortly. But it's just so important that we pay attention to our pelvis as well as, our lichen sclerosus, because the two are working together. It's a team. We can't just pay attention to one and ignore the other, because then this one's going to get jealous and start rampaging against us. And we don't want that. We want to keep them both happy.
Like, imagine if you have like a tear, and then if I have a tear, I can feel my entire pelvic floor is just like trying to protect me, trying to move away from that tear, because I don't know, but it just does that. So when that happens to me, I just lie down and I'm like, okay, breathe into it, let it go. The tear is painful, but it's not scary. Doing that naked, even better. No, but I'm all about being naked all the time.
Yeah. We'll talk about the naked stuff in a bit, but that's actually, I love that you say that, because I think it illustrates 2 points. So the first point is it illustrates that you have a strong mind-body connection to your pelvic floor, because you're even able to perceive that. Because most people that haven't fostered a strong connection to their pelvic floor have no idea what it feels like. And those minute changes, like as I'm breathing and talking, my pelvic floor is moving. It's doing stuff. It's not just staying there dead in the water, right? But a lot of us, we don't kind of realize it.
Yeah.
Because we're not taught, to kind of focus on that muscle. And like even, working out at the gym for years, I learned how to create like a mind-body connection to almost every muscle in my body, but my pelvic floor was never brought up.
Yeah, because it's
And,
not important. Why care about the pelvic floor?
right? That's just it. I was like, no one ever, like no personal trainer, no one ever mentioned that to me. So it is important to create that connection so that you can be more in tune with your pelvic floor, because when you don't, a lot of people will say, well, I don't have any pain in my pelvis. I'm fine. And then they come back to me 2 weeks later and say, well, actually, I went to a pelvic floor physical therapist and she said I have super tight pelvic floor muscles and they were riddled with trigger points and all of these things, but I don't understand, like, why didn't I feel that? And it's like, at the end of the day, pain is complex. Like I said, pain can refer. We're not always aware of it. And then, and the second point is that with that pelvic floor trying to like pull away from the tear, that is such a common and unconscious bodily function. It's our unconscious body trying to protect ourselves, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it sees pain, danger in the tear, and it wants to recoil. It wants to move away to protect you, right? And so it's like your body means well. All it wants to do is, all it's focused on is your survival.
Exactly.
But sometimes how it deals with that, it kind of goes awry. So in doing that pulling back and tensing away, it can actually create more issues downstream. And so what's wonderful is that when you foster that mind-body connection, you can catch yourself in those moments. So there's times where I'm sitting at my desk and I'm super stressed and I'll be like, ooh, my jaw and my ear, and this, and my pelvic floor, they are tight. And so then I take a moment like you and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Breathe it out, and try to get those muscles to relax. But the important part is even being able to catch them. Just a quick analogy, or not analogy,
too. And it's like, your body wants to support you. And it's doing it best to support you. But if it's not given the tools that your body needs to feel supported back, it's gonna happen a bunch of weird stuff.
Yes, I love that. So it's about saying, hey, body, I see you, I hear you. Thank you for always doing your best for me. Here's some tools to help make your job easier so that we can both be happy. So, let's talk about some of those tools. And I think, one tool is the Pelvic Health Yoga membership. So I'd love if you could share, a little bit about how and why you created it and then what's in there.
Yes. So I started the Pelvic Health Yoga membership for people living with overactive pelvic floor dysfunction. First, when I did my pelvic floor teacher training, there's so many focuses out there on people living with hypo and not hypertonic pelvic floor, where they're too loose. Like there's so much focus on that.
Oh my gosh, so much focus. And just honestly, I think it's the patriarchy, because they're the ones saying that we all need to be tight. So everyone wants to do Kegels so they can have a tight vagina, and they get the O shot so they can have a tight vagina, because patriarchy tells us that we need to be tight so that we can please the penis, which is very, very irritating. But you're right. It's all about the other one. But what about folks with this, the hyperactive one?
I know. And I've been in so much pain, like I said, going from the age of 15. And this is also what I wanted to say when I said that about my lichen sclerosus, not knowing how long I've had it. And when I look back, that my pelvic floor pain started when I was 15, I'm like, there's some correlation with something that happened. I'm like, interesting. But we're walking around with this pain, and like, I have a lot of my students in all of my classes coming to me being like, I have hip pain, I have low back pain. Have you seen a pelvic physio? No. What is that? A lot of people that live with hip pain, low back pain, they probably have something going on in their pelvis. And when I created the membership, I wanted to create a space for people living with overactive pelvic floor dysfunction so they could come, relax, create space in their pelvis. I'm big on using visualization and the breath with the movements to really connect with the body and kind of invite the power back into your body. Because I feel like there's so much power within movement and breath work and the mind that we're not even aware of. We think that when we have to move, it has to be something really, really difficult for it to be beneficial.
Right.
But what I teach are very easy classes for people living with hypertonic pelvic floor dysfunction, overactive pelvic floor dysfunction. So in the membership, we do have live classes. We also have recorded classes. We do pelvic reset poses. We do pelvic flows. And then we also have breathwork, meditations, and some EFT in there as well. And it's such a beautiful community. It is the best when we show up for the live classes, and before classes, people get to share what they're going through, feel supported, and people also get to show up and say, I can ask them, what are you struggling with today? What do you want to work on? And it doesn't have to be just physically something in the body. It can be, I have sacrum pain, I have low back pain today, or I feel tight in my inner thighs. But it can also be, oh, I need help releasing something. I'm holding on to something that I find hard to forgive, or I need some extra energy today. Something like that as well. Because to me, it's not just the physical part, it's all of it.
Totally. Honestly, a lot of the times that I show up to class, or I more commonly than not do the classes after, just because my schedule doesn't always align. But what I usually go to the classes for is when I feel like my nervous system is ramped up and I'm super stressed and super anxious, or like not in a good place mentally. That's where I go to kind of reground myself and find some calmness and
bad hair everywhere.
I was gonna say, is it yours or Frankie's? But yeah, you know, I think that sometimes we think we have to go to it when we're in physical pain, but you can also go to it when you're just struggling mentally. And also, you don't need to be struggling, period. These are just things that are beneficial for your body. And what I love about the membership is that it's not just yoga, right? Like, I don't always do the yoga because sometimes I'm like, no, I don't feel like it. Like, too much energy, too much work. Even though the classes are very like restorative and slow and gentle, sometimes I'm like, not my vibe today. But I'll do a meditation, or I'll lie in bed and do like breath work, and I'll just stick in my headphones and do some breathing. So it's like, I love that there's so much diversity there for you to pick and choose and kind of become empowered to say, what feels most supportive for me right now? What do I need? Because what you need might be different from what other people in the membership need, right? So it's always about honoring yourself. And so I love that honoring yourself in there becomes really easy because you get to kind of pick and choose from so many things. Even the classes, you get to choose which class you want to do. And what about, so I wanted to ask for the yoga classes. I know some people with lichen sclerosus are nervous because they are prone to tearing. So they're worried that doing yoga might cause tearing. And, you know, I bring up how you do a lot of modifications, but maybe you can speak a little bit more to that concern of like, is this appropriate for people with LS, or is it only appropriate for people with pelvic floor, you know, related issues?
Yes, of course. So in the membership, we have a lot of people with lichen sclerosus. We have a lot of people with endometriosis, interstitial cystitis that I can barely say.
I did that pretty well.
I just struggle with lichen sclerosus, and that's where my limit goes. Like, why are these words so hard? No, so definitely people with lichen sclerosus come, and we talk a lot about vulvar pain as well. And sometimes we do like vulvar pain specific practices. Like, I tear a lot, and I'm all for comfort when it comes to a class. So I myself, I'm the one being recorded, but if I'm not comfortable, I want to be comfortable, and I live with vulvar pain. So if I have a really bad tear, I'm going to put on my ugliest freaking pants, and I don't care. I'm going to put on my granny panties. And also, I know that you are in contact with private packs as well. I like to pop that one on. That really helps me.
Yes.
Or the naked yoga. A lot of people show up and they do naked yoga, so you don't have to put your camera on. Yeah.
Every time. I don't think I've ever showed, maybe there was one class where I showed up. I think the first time I showed up, and then after that, I was like, Penny, I'm sorry, but it's really hot in my apartment and I'm doing this naked, so I'm not going on cam. Like, and then I usually fall asleep at the end. So usually if you see me in a class, I come in with a black screen because I'm naked. And then because I usually feel very relaxed at the end, I often fall asleep. So I'll actually like set an alarm if the class is supposed to end at 2. Then I'll put an alarm at 2:30 in case I do kind of fall into a little nap, because that can happen sometimes. I just get really relaxed and then I fall asleep. But yeah, so Naked is an option. And even like if you're not naked and you're just not comfortable being on camera, like there's no pressure. Like I know that for you, you're about honor what you need.
Yeah.
Like if you need the
exactly.
privacy and don't want to share your face, you also don't have to share. Like, you know, you go around and what are people dealing with? Like you can just say, I don't feel like sharing today. Like that is
You don't have to say
totally
anything. I don't usually call out people unless their camera's on, and if they don't want to
right.
say anything, I will just leave it at that. As long as you feel comfortable, that's all that matters. And a lot of people show up and they do their practice in bed on the first day of their period. They might not feel like doing a lot. Come there, show up for yourself so that you can feel a little bit better, just a teeny tiny bit better than what you did when you came, and do what you can do. It's like you
Yeah.
said, like people, they meet themselves where they need to be met,
Yeah.
and I find that a lot of my students, some of them send me messages like, oh, I love the meditations, like that's their focus. And then I have some people like, oh, I
Yeah.
love these 3 poses and I do them every morning and it helps so much with my pain and just coming into your body, because a lot of us, we stay in our head. It's really hard for us to come into our body, and I get that. I totally do. And it's just finding that space where you can just slowly start to bring yourself back in. That is so important for healing as well.
I 100% agree. And so I talk about the Pelvic Health Yoga membership a lot because I find that it attacks so many different things that we need to be concerned with lichen sclerosus. It helps with stress management. How? Well, because the practices are more hatha based, they're more restorative, they're more slow and gentle, they're very calming for the nervous system, which is really good for stress. There's also the meditation and breath work. Again, breathing is such a huge tool in pain therapy. Like I got admitted into a pain therapy program at Sinai Hospital in Toronto. It's one of the first things they teach, like the breath. It's so powerful. It's such an underrated tool. And so it's like you're doing the breath work, you've got meditation, you're working on your pelvic health, which again is important because as you do this, as we start to create more space in the pelvis, you're also going to learn how to make that mind-body connection. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the first things in the membership is kind of teaching you about the pelvic floor and how to kind of foster that connection through the breath. And so it's like having that awareness is very, very important so that we can work on creating space. We can work on calming and those muscles and letting them do what they need to do so that we're less likely, like I said before, to kind of have these extra symptoms and difficulties coming from the pelvic floor. So it really is like a physical and mental health kind of haven in a sense. And then it's almost like I don't know, maybe I'm aging myself here, but like a choose your own adventure book. I don't know. In like elementary school, we had to read a lot of those. And for anyone that is like young and is like, what are you talking about? It's like a fiction book. And then like at the bottom, it'll give you like 3 options. And it'll be like, to save the princess in the castle, go to page 99. To, you know, fight with the knight, go to page 20. Like, and you have these options and you get to kind of create the story for you.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, really? I wondered. I was like, I don't know if it's just an age thing, but like also like, I don't know if they have that in Sweden. So yeah, it's like a choose your own adventure. So it's like in that one book, there are like 50 different ways that story can manifest depending on the options that you choose at the end of the pages.
I like that.
Yeah, it was actually really fun. I remember always enjoying that like in elementary school. And that's kind of how I view the membership because it's really on you. You get to choose how present you want to be, how often you want to do it, and what you want to do, and when you want to do it. I've literally done a meditation of yours in a waiting room at a vulvar clinic because I was getting anxious and I wanted something to like bring me back into my body a bit and help settle me a bit. So I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. And then I just logged onto the membership on my phone and plugged my earphones in and closed my eyes and I did the meditation. And so it's like, you get to pick. It's you. And I find that really nice because I find it kind of gives the power back to you a little bit because lichen sclerosus and pelvic floor health conditions can really make it feel like a lot's been taken away from you. A lot of choice has been taken away from you. And so when someone gives you that choice back, even if it's small, I find it so empowering. And so just the choice to go in there and be like, I'm going to take control of my health. I'm going to go in. I'm going to do a meditation today. That's all I have capacity for. I'm going to join the live class this week and not next week. Like you get to choose what's best for you. And I think that rings very true to just the approach of yoga in general, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Your body, you choose.
You do what you do. Like that's what I always say. It doesn't matter what kind of class you show up. I'm like, as long as you feel
100%.
good, that's all I want. I want you to feel golden when you leave, and then
Yeah.
you've done a good job.
And another thing that I love that you do is you do provide a lot of modifications for the poses. Like every pose that you walk us through has like at least a couple modifications so that, because I think, you're very good at being mindful that there's so many different types of people in your audience with different degrees of pain. And so one pose will just not work for everybody.
Exactly.
So you get to kind of play around with that and find what pose works for you. So like if you are, concerned about tearing with LS, maybe you don't do, things with your legs wide. Maybe you do what Penny's doing, but do it with your legs closed or do something else. There's literally days where certain poses didn't feel accessible to me at all. And I just laid down and breathed until it was the next one, and like, okay, or I'll go into child's pose. And I'll be like, I'm going to chill here until the next pose because I can't do this stretch right now or this stretch or this pose right now, right? And so again, kind of a choose your own adventure. And yoga teachers always encourage that.
Yeah.
We always say, like if you can't do this, modify it. If you can't modify it or it doesn't feel good for you right now, just wait, just breathe.
Exactly.
Breathing is yoga.
And if you are not feeling comfortable in a pose and you're lying there and you're like huffing and puffing and you can't breathe properly, your body's not going to end up in the parasympathetic. It's going to tense up, and then the yoga that you're trying to do to help prevent tensing, it's going to make it worse. You want to put yourself into a safe mode. In order for you to do so, you need to meet your body where it needs to be met. So that's so true, Jacqueline. Yes.
100%. So yeah, I always recommend that folks with lichen sclerosis, A, get assessed by a pelvic floor physical therapist, and then B, no matter what, prioritize your pelvic health. And that doesn't mean that you have to wait for your pelvic health to get really bad. Maybe your pelvic health is actually really good, but what you want to do is you just want to focus on keeping it good, keeping your pelvic floor healthy so that the vulva has the least amount of stuff to deal with, because lichen sclerosis is already annoying enough to have to deal with. We don't then want bladder and bowel issues and extra itch and burning because of overactive, pelvis. So I love the pelvic floor, health membership because it really helps me stay on top of my pelvic health and just keeping that focused. And I also use it sometimes before I have sex. If I'm feeling like a little bit tenser than normal, I'm like, okay, so let's go do a couple pelvic poses and then maybe let's do some pelvic floor breathing for a little bit before, so that I kind of get things loose and softened and I get myself into a space where my body actually feels safe.
Exactly.
So I love that you've created this. It has been so important to my health journey, and I know it's been important to so many other people's health journeys. So if anybody does want to join the membership, we do have a link. I will leave that in the description box below, and I'll leave it on the page for a little bit. So if you use that link and you use my code, you'll get a 7-day free trial as well as 30% off of your first month. So you can always give it a go there and see if it's a good fit for you. So again, I will leave that full link in the description box below. And Penny, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the pelvic health yoga membership or pelvic health and lichen sclerosis in general before we wrap things up?
Anything else I want to say?
So $1 million question.
So yeah, I have so many things. I can always talk so much. No, but so one thing with lichen sclerosis, I know how devastating it can be. It is so hard when you're going through that pain. Like I get pain, I get tearing. That's my biggest issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. So far, I haven't sworn since I
think we can swear on YouTube. I don't know. I don't make it for kids, so yeah, I think you're fine.
Freaking hard. So, but what I want you to remember is just that you're so much more than your lichen sclerosis. I feel like sometimes we get so attached to the condition that we have or the conditions that we forget to zoom out and see the bigger picture of what your body needs. Like we were saying, like don't just focus on the shoulder, move a little bit further and see what happens. And that's also going to feel so much better, and you're going to feel so much more empowered in that sense as well.
100%. That was so well said. Well, thank you so much, Penny, for being here. Now, if anyone wants to kind of follow you, where can we find you?
So you can find me over on Instagram. That's my little place to hang out. Wellbeing.by.penny. And I'm also on TikTok. I'm trying out TikTok. I'm going to tell you, I think TikTok's a little bit scary.
I have to agree with you on that. My home is also more Instagram. I also have a TikTok. I haven't quite figured TikTok out yet. I think you and I are both, we feel comfortable in our IG space. We're just trying to figure out TikTok, but
and I feel like my community on Instagram, it's like the best community. And then you have those users 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they comment something about vulvas that are not in alignment with what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
Fair. I think my challenge with TikTok is just how little you actually get to write. Like your caption is like 50 characters and you're like, what can I say?
And you always have the best caption, so that must be so hard for you.
Oh, it's such a pet peeve. It's such a pet peeve. But everybody, go follow Penny over there because she makes some of my favorite content out there, just in general. Like you're one of my favorite content creators, like even outside of like the vulvar health space. Like it's just so clever. You're just so funny. I love your energy. It's always just breath of fresh air. So definitely go follow Penny there. And if people want to reach out to you, of course, they can DM. And then do you have an email that you want to share as well?
Yes, wellbeingbypenny@gmail.com. That's where you can find me.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Penny. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and your wisdom. Thank you to everyone tuning in and watching. And that is it for this video. We will catch you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.